Welcome in, everyone. Episode four, five. What is this? Five, Richie?
This is five.
Episode
Special
five,
special episode, debate night.
debate night. Richie's got his shirt on. Love to see it. I don't have anything special on. I'm just coming off the golf course. But
Yeah, so
what are we thinking here? What do we want to talk about? We're going to be doing this first half of this episode as like a little pre-debate. What we're going to be looking for. Predictions, maybe even some like if we were running the campaign, what would we do, sort of deal. And then second half of our episode, we're going to shoot after the debate, which is tonight, and we're going to give summaries what we sounded like. So, Richie, you want to start off with the rules?
yeah, so I know everyone's making a big deal about these rules and these debates now. Trump and Kamala both arguing back and forth about the rules. Took a quick look what they landed on. They did end up going with the muted mics, which I don't know. I think that helps Trump because it will keep him from jumping the gun and embarrassing himself. I know he did that in 2020 against Biden
Okay,
quite a
okay,
bit.
I like that. I was kind of thinking Mike's cut was really you should argue it should hurt Trump because he's good at the repartee, cutting off people, usually getting the upper hand. But in recent times, he's been more just kind of an asshole, speaking over people, making himself look bad. So, all right, I can see that as protection of a kind for him.
Yeah, I mean it is kind of a catch 22 there because at the same time, how sometimes he'll throw in some good one-liners and that's a good clickbait video for TikTok or something. And he did well with it against Hillary back in 2016. He had the old line, she said something along the lines of, "We're lucky someone with the temperament of Donald Trump isn't in charge of isn't in charge of our country." He hit her quick back with it because you'd be in jail. That was probably gained him more favor than it hurt him. But then he tends to go the opposite route sometimes too. So I think that might help him overall. Um, the other one, I think this one helps him a lot, and it's that this was definitely the Trump campaign that was pushing for this, but they have to be standing. I believe Kamala was pushing to be sitting during the debate, which is kind of an interesting one too. Is if you look at all of the presidents over the course of recent history since debates started happening on TV, the average height of the presidents over the years has gotten taller and taller. Um, Likely because just the imagery of being on stage, standing next to her is kind of more of a tall looming figure. I think he's 6 foot something, so I think that might help him as well.
And that's totally just the psychological aspect. Is
Yeah,
that one?
yeah, that's what I was thinking here. I don't know how much that actually weighs into it. I'm sure no one's voting on the president based on height, but right, kind of a subliminal, the same way that they would make propaganda of dictators and rulers as like
I mean,
tall
it's
looming
no. I was gonna
figures.
say it's the strong man archetype that Trump's
Right.
trying to play into.
Yeah, right. So I think that helps them. Kind of a weird one. They're going to do no opening statements, which I'm
I
not
saw
really
that
sure.
closing statements, but no opening statements, right?
Yeah, I'm not
I
really
I,
sure
I,
on that one. But
I believe I saw closing statements, no opening statements. Trump gets the last word in closing statements. I saw that. I believe Kamala chose stage right, which is another psychological, or she chose like stage left or something. So she's on the right side of your camera, on the right side of your TV. Sorry, it's another psychological thing where the human eye automatically like goes to the right. Typically, like when you look at
ah,
someone's face, it like goes to the right. So it's just another like thing that it's a mental trick that might decide a presidency, which is interesting.
yeah, kind of interesting. They've really taken the presidential debate here and turned it into an NFL football game. They're just flipping coins and choosing sides, but
Exactly.
who gets the ball first and that type of thing. Um, And then, yeah, obviously, no audience. I think that hurts Trump a lot.
Yeah,
Just the
for
way
sure.
he's an audience guy. He's a stand-up comedian, so that's going to hurt him. And then the last one was that no one's allowed notes or props, which I think the no notes hurts Kamala just because she seems Trump just seems much better off the cuff. I think everyone would agree. And then but Trump's also probably more likely to pull out some stage props, so that that might have been a negotiation deal there.
Yeah, I can see it. No notes may end up hurting Trump, and if he's given like you got to stay on task of like these sort of deals. He's kind of been rambling more and more that I've seen in the
Yep.
past few weeks. So like you know, you can see signs of it aging with him. I'll say it.
Yeah, no, and he's really got to avoid that, I think. And I also think he's going to come in. He's going to come in pretty hot, and based on the last debate against Biden, he's coming in confident, and he's going to try to come in aggressive. I don't think that approach. Now, I think he did really good in that debate against Biden. I think
I
everyone kind
mean,
of
I mean,
agreed.
I mean, he made Biden drop out. I mean, that's
Yeah, yeah, I'd say that was
it
a
was
success.
that
But
it was either Trump murdered him or the Democratic Party was literally just like we're sacrificing this guy to the wolves. Like they knew for a while exactly what they were doing. That's why they didn't host fucking primary debates because they knew their boy would get ran through and then they could just slide in whoever they want. I've
right,
my buddy, my study abroad friend from Texas sent me something like that like 4 months ago. Like, oh, this is exactly what they're gonna do. They're gonna like wait until after the primary election, and then they're gonna say that Biden's too old, and then they're just gonna make it Kamala. I'm like, oh, that's a conspiracy. And then
yeah, they pulled it
lo and
off.
behold, nobody voted for Kamala Harris so far.
Yeah. So, well, I think that's what Trump's got to watch out for is just, it's one thing when it's an old white man against an old white man, those kind of personal insults, kind of implying that he's dumb and that type of thing. It looks good for Trump. Trump's up there against Biden looking like the more competent,
Right,
more
right.
capable one.
The more competent of two geriatric people who should just
Right,
who
yeah.
should be working on their golf game, not talking about it in a presidential debate.
Exactly. But with Kamala, I think if he goes with that same approach, I think he's got to avoid the personal insults. He's got to avoid the character attacks, and he's got to try to stay on policy because the framing looks much different. And he might, the Harris campaign is wishing that he would just bait himself into some pre-written one-liner that they have written up where they can make him out to be a racist or a misogynist or something like that. So I think that's one thing he's got to resist if he doesn't want to blow this debate here. But
He's gonna have to rein that in. I mean, people are getting less and less tolerant towards that tone from him. It's never
mhm.
a good sign. Hearing character attacks come out of your guy. That's kind of what made him popular back in the day, though, because everyone's fine with you attacking Hillary Clinton's character. Like,
Right.
nobody's fine with it doing it to Kamala Harris, it seems like. So it's
Yeah, I mean it's
that's
ran
going to be
its
a
course for
mission.
sure. It's definitely ran its course, and at the same time too, I would also say that it would probably hurt Kamala if she pulls the opposite side of that coin and tries to use the woman card or the race card, just because I think Trump's got easy comebacks for that, especially when it comes to the race card. She could try to use the racist attack, but I think his record just from being president, I think you'd have good comebacks for that. You can bring up First Step Act. You could bring up the fact that she was a prosecutor who put away a ton of people for nonviolent crimes for insanely long terms. Meanwhile, he was the one that was getting everyone out. I think he's got some room to play that one, and to my broader point, I think being is that if he could just stay on policy, I think he looks a lot better than Kamala. But if I was Kamala's campaign manager, I would be saying try to stay on character because when it comes to character, obviously Trump's got quite a few flaws in the mind of the average American. I think so.
I don't know. I was kind of thinking maybe they tell you say Kamala should like go out like aggressively, like get into a character battle essentially. I was kind of thinking she should just play like defensively, just say your pre-written stuff, stay on brand, stay on par, and then see what Trump does. If he starts rambling and going crazy, like let him do that. I think she probably tries to not lose this debate, especially to start. Maybe see how sharp he is. If he comes out sharp, you got to step your game up. he comes out bad, you just gotta sit there and like let that happen, basically.
Yeah, let him talk himself
Right.
into a predicament there. Well, that's the other thing too, is that I was thinking about it, and it really is that's a great point. It really is going to come down to countering the opponent's tone. So I'm thinking everyone's been giving Kamala shit about the Joker laugh and kind of just the, kind of goofy, kind of airheaded things she says when she's kind of giggling and not really coming off too serious in a lot of these interviews. I'm guessing her approach to the debate is to try to put that away and avoid the Joker laugh and avoid all of that. So she might come out pretty stern and straight faced. I think if she does that, the best strategic response from Trump would to then be more of the comedian kind of upbeat, positive version of Trump. Versus if she is doing the laughing and trying to be the president of joy, then it might look better for Trump to counter with a more stern, serious approach where he can call out, "Hey, look, we've got a lot of wars breaking out here. We can't be just goofing around up here." But it really does come down to whoever goes first. The other one's going to have to very strategically counter that tone, I think, and try to contrast it rather than match it.
I like that idea of countering the tone a lot. It's res- response, response. It's staying water, reacting to things as they come. That's just a great rule of life, really, if nothing else. But I would totally agree. I haven't seen that upbeat, funny version of Trump in a long time. I don't,
No, no, definitely not.
I don't think he's done that in a while. If he comes out and just kind of plays his cool guy sort of attitude, I think he could maybe do well this time. But I think he's gonna come out guns ablaze and try and put Kamala in the crypt like he thinks he did Biden, which he did again.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's what he's going to do as well, which I don't think is a very smart move on his part, just because the framing will look much worse if he's coming that way. And then, yeah, I mean, whether when it comes to policy, I think if he stays on policy, he wins. But if he allows Kamala to get in his head and start to, if I were her, I would start putting out maybe not blatant lies because nowadays everyone's fact checking all the time, but I would start putting out exaggerations and allegations towards Trump, or at least not even that, even just calling out his character issues. I would bet that she's going to call out January 6th, his convictions, all of these kind of character problems that she can associate with Trump. Now, what that's probably going to do is get him fired up so that he can come back and start, being angry Trump. And now she's just baited him into losing his cool on stage, which would hurt him, I think, for sure.
Totally agree. I'd like to see. I mean, I'd like to see a serious debate for once. I mean,
Oh yeah,
speaking just as an American, like I'd like I would love to have two amazing, competent candidates that can contrast each other's views. And that's just not something I've experienced in a long time.
yeah. We'll see about that. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but yeah, no, I agree for sure. I mean, the last thing I want to do right now is sit here and watch a debate where Kamala starts talking about Stormy Daniels, and then Trump turns back. Oh, well, what about Willie Brown? And they start talking about past kind of just like smear campaigns on each other, basically, where it's like, all right, get to the damn policies. If they get on the policies, I mean, I would be curious to hear Kamala's actual policies from her. You never really hear it from her.
I'd love to hear Kamala have to defend that unrealized capital gains tax we talked about the other day, Richie. I'd love to
Yep,
see that live on air. Is that question
yep.
going to come her way? I somewhat doubt it.
I mean, if I were Trump, that would be one of the first things I bring up because that's for one. I don't think that either of them can speak to policy very well, and even Trump, I like his policies a lot better, but I don't think that he can even really speak to him that well when on a stage. I think he understands him. I think he can design good policies that would help the economy, help the border, that type of thing. But then when he gets called out, he just doesn't sound very fluent in them. He doesn't sound like an intellectual up there, and I don't think either does Kamala. And so I feel like it's going to be one of those where it might start off that way and then spiral into a schoolyard bullying uh, campaign.
It
But
it it kind of seems like this one's squaring up to be like knock them down, drag them out type of fight, right? You can't see this being a fair fight, a fair match where everyone's playing clean.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not going to be any type of modern symposium. It's going to be more of a WWE SmackDown type of thing. But when it comes to the policies, I mean, the unrealized capital gains. I would totally call that out right away if I were
I'm
Trump.
the first thing that's going to come out of Trump's mouth, I'll make a first prediction, is going to be the border.
Yeah, I could see that. I would
It's
guess
it's the only thing he's talked
that's
about for
actually
the
a good.
last like month straight. It's
Yeah,
going to be the first thing he mentions.
yeah, that's a good one. That inflation. What do you think Kamala is saying first? What's her first line of attack?
I'm not Donald Trump. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm
Women's rights, maybe, abortion
I think so
rights.
too. I was going to say abortion as well. I know but that's the thing that I feel like if Trump was smart, he'd be able to dodge that one because he's never been for an abortion ban. He's always been for leaving it up to the states. I feel like Project 2025 is another one where she's going to come out with the Project 2025 thing. If you look at her website, it's all about Project 2025. She's got her policies, and right next to them, it's Project 2025. If she
Mm-hmm.
brings that up, Trump's got a simple, I'd have nothing to do with that. I've stated that publicly, and he could shut it down real quick. That's what I think he should do. But what he will likely do is he'll probably start getting mad and say, "Oh, you're a liar, fake news," start going off, and now he's angry Trump, which
I
might not be the
I
best look.
I have great friends with the Heritage Foundation. They're great people, all of them. I love them. What they do doesn't concern me. Doesn't nothing to do with me. I love them.
Well,
I support them. They support me very well, of course.
that's another thing too. In all seriousness, a great move by Kamala would be to bait him. And Biden did this back in 2020. He did it really well. I think that might have been the key moment that lost Trump that election. But if she can bait him into having to choose a side amongst his supporters, having to disown his or condemn someone on the far right, a group on the far right. They
Mm-hmm.
did that to him with the Proud Boys in 2020,
Right.
and
Right.
with the
Right.
Proud Boys stand by and stand down, that type of thing, which made him look terrible because he pissed off the Proud Boys and he also pissed off everyone else. And so if he gets put in one of those positions where he's got to kind of condemn some of his base, he, I mean, I think he should just do it. It's not a primary anymore; it's a general election, but he struggles to do that a lot. That one I will give to Kamala. She's got a good
Right. And
opportunity
then,
there.
as you just alluded to there, a little political game theory for everyone who might not know this. In primary elections, politicians have to lean further in their direction, right? You're voting for your party supporters, so you have to lean further left or further right and able to win the primary vote. In general elections, then you see them move much more central. All of their policies become much more centrist because in a general election, you're trying to gain support from both sides.
Yep. And that's one thing too is that Kamala's never participated in a general election before. I don't think. Well, I guess the vice presidential one. But a lot of if looking at we're studying tape, uh, most of her most of her debate performances, almost all of them, I think, except for that one, were all in primary elections where she was going pretty far left. That could be a line of attack from Trump that you hear that if he focuses on policy, he could attack her for in the past being pretty radical. Now she's trying to moderate it, but everyone's got videos of the past debates as well, where she did tend to be more radical when it came to her proposed policies. But and when it comes to policy, I mean, Trump's rhetoric is very radical, but his track record as far as policy goes is it's tough to really label him a very far right guy just because most of his policies were fairly moderate.
Yeah, I mean, tax cuts for the rich are just the norm for politicians. They're all the rich. They all give tax cuts to the rich. That's how you
Yeah,
gain. That's how you gain power.
yeah, but even as far as a lot of his social policies, he was never very radical there. Some of his economic policies, you could say, were
I
I'm
don't
sure the
really
border.
I don't really remember any social policies being really out there at all. I mean, do you consider the border a social policy? Like that's close to a social policy.
Yeah,
The
I don't know.
I mean
That's a good
that's
question.
international as well. It's probably both. I mean, because you have to deal with the social domestic impacts of the wall, but also it is
Yeah.
about, international security, international borders.
Yeah, I was thinking the only one that comes to mind, which again I don't know if this would even be considered social policy, more domestic, is just the prison reform and kind of he did have the first step back and a few other policies that lowered um, prison sentences for nonviolent criminals, that type of thing, which would be considered more of a left leaning policy, at least in the traditional sense. But speaking of foreign policy as well, that's another one where um, just during Trump's term, the fact that there was really no wars going on, and now there's multiple. That's something that if I were him, I would be emphasizing that as much as possible. At the same time, where the Democrats had the story narrative going that Trump was a puppet of Putin, and Trump, um, the whole Russia thing that they had going for a while. If that were to come up, I think you'd be giving Trump a layup. If I were Kamala, I would avoid that because you're giving him a layup. He can simply say, and it's on her website too, which is I think a bad move. She's got on there that Trump cozied up to Putin and said that in quotes he would let him do whatever he wanted. But meanwhile, then all Trump has to do to rebuttal against that is to just say, okay, but when I was a president, Putin didn't do anything. And then literally a month after the Biden Harris campaign or the Biden Harris administration started, he started invading his neighbors. So
I mean, what can Trump do about Russia? Like, is he such good friends with Putin that do you think he could stop that war? Like, I don't think so.
I think he would have more likelihood of stopping it just because he can probably negotiate terms in a much better way. I mean, you could say what you want about Trump. That is what he does. Is he's the art of the deal, a negotiator. And there definitely is, or there's definitely a reason why Putin was not really stepping on anyone's toes during his presidency. I'm guessing that he's giving Putin a good deal. Putin's probably sitting over there thinking, yeah, the deal we worked out or we can work out where it would be a win-win for both of us is much better than going to war. And then on top of that, I would also say just the strongman persona is just enough to deter um, probably any type of invasions or aggression. Just because we have the military and having someone like Trump, who's a little bit of a wild card, might not be the worst thing when it comes to maintaining the peace.
This is a question not really about the upcoming debate, so maybe we should keep this brief. But if Putin says, "I want the land that I've taken," what do you think we should do about that?
Um, I mean, if there's a way to negotiate it where what we can't do is just give him a slap on the wrist and say, okay, yeah, oh yeah, you took it, yeah, you can have it. I mean, we should definitely, and this could be a whole nother debate too. We should definitely try to have some type of, um, there should be we should play some role in making sure that it's not just a free pass for countries, specifically Eastern European countries, to just start moving their way over into the West.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think you can capitulate in that circumstance. Like, you can't let them like take something by force. Like
Right. Yeah.
that's not how you deal with expansionist regimes.
Right.
It's
Exactly. Yeah.
but so then it becomes all right. If you're not giving us the land that we've taken, then we're not signing the deal. So I don't know. We'll move away from that. We'll get back
Yeah.
on to
We can
that.
maybe we'll see if it comes up in the debate. Maybe talk about it in the post debate episode as
We
well.
can, dude.
But
Russia and Israel should both come up in tonight's debate.
yeah, they definitely should.
I mean, we're funding two foreign wars, which I mean, that is our favorite thing to do on Earth. That's the game that we've been in for the last like 40 years now, 70
Yeah.
years maybe. But
Yeah.
I think that both of those candidates should have to face the music in terms of that. Like, what would you do that would actually be different? I'd love to see that question.
If that question comes up, who do you think it helps versus hurts, or do you think it
That helps. That
might
probably
help
helps.
both? Or
That probably helps Trump. I mean, what's Kamala going to say? Like, oh, if I'm in power, I'll be able to stop it. It's like, well, why didn't you stop it the last 4 years then? You've been in power the last 4 years. Versus then Trump can come in and say, none of this would have happened on my watch. If I get in, I'm gonna stop it all in one night. It'll be the greatest treaty. No one will make a better treaty ever. And he's not really wrong. He can say whatever the hell
right.
he wants in that situation.
Yeah, I mean that is a tough one too, just because Kamala really has to walk the line. If Israel Palestine comes up, a lot of her base is pro Palestine, but a lot of her donors and all of
She's
the
pro.
swamp,
She's pro Israel. They're all
right? Yeah, all of the
they're all
swamp
pro
creatures are.
Israel. Yeah.
So you could tell that they try to kind of avoid it just because the pro-Palestinian voters are passionately pro-Palestinian and would sacrifice their in a lot of cases would sacrifice their vote, even though it means putting Trump in the White House. They probably would. A large chunk of the pro-Palestinian voters probably would sacrifice their vote just to stick it to Kamala if she refuses to side with or at least agree to like a ceasefire kind of situation with Palestine. Whereas Trump doesn't really have anyone. I don't think he has a large percentage of the pro-Palestinian activists
No, he
voting
does
for him
not.
anyway. So he doesn't stand as much to lose with an
No,
answer
dude,
that's
that question could be a landmine for Kamala. I totally see what you're saying there because
yeah, just
she
based on
is in Israel's pocket as basically every other politician is, and her base is very pro Palestine. So she is going to have to walk the line, as you said there.
yeah,
Whereas
right. So
whereas
that one could hurt.
Trumpet's no loss. It's I can say whatever I want here and have no repercussions because even if I don't end the war when I get in office, he's still in office by then, right? Like
Hmm. Yeah, and it's some. I mean, it's something where I bet if they do ask Trump that question, he does probably give a non-answer, and he says, "Hey, I like Netanyahu, but I like everyone. I like peace. We're gonna, he's probably kind of just do, just kind of dodge it." But yeah, I mean that he doesn't really have anything to lose if that question comes up, and I don't think he has much to lose if Russia comes up either. Um,
no,
just because he did have the track record, so that could help him. But if I'm Kamala, I'm trying to redirect that question and go right to Trump's a convict. Trump, try to
uh,
bring up all the bad things.
all right, and then economy. When economy comes up, who comes out the stronger?
I've got to say Trump's got to come out
You,
better
you've
on the
you
economy.
like you've got to at least give him the advantage. Like
Yeah, I mean Kamala could say that's the thing is that a lot of what Kamala could say, and based on what her policies are on her website, and based on what she said before, she has decent policy proposals that she could stand on and say, here's my platform. I'm here to help everyone, not just the rich, that type of thing. But the only difference is that she's already been, it's her administration that's currently in office. And so all Trump's got to do to combat that is just say, well, then why haven't you done it? Because when I was in office, I said I was going to do this. I did. I said I was going to do the tax cuts. I did. Whether you like the tax cuts or not, it doesn't matter. I did what I said. Here you are saying you're going to do a bunch of things that you haven't done.
exactly. All right, economy. We'll give that to Trump as well. We had given foreign wars to Trump.
I think
Um,
border Trump wins.
border. We had social is the next one I'm bringing up. You gotta favor that for Kamala.
Yeah,
On social
absolutely.
issues.
Definitely.
Character issues as well. Kamala. So
Yep.
it's going to be a tight one for sure.
Yeah.
It's
No,
going to
it
be
definitely will.
who flinches
Climate.
first. Who flinches first, basically, is when it's going to be.
Yeah. Climate's another one where Kamala can
Climate,
really use that. Um, although, I mean, I guess that would be actually kind of a good one because it really would come down to, how many of the American voters are that passionate about
I'm
climate change.
I'm a huge climate change guy, and I'm gonna say, who gives a flying fuck about climate change at this point? Like, we have very real, tangible issues right now that, and I'm a big climate change advocate. Like, I think we need to be doing things for that, but the ranking of how important that is on people's minds is just so low.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think
And
another one, and
and thus you see why climate change hasn't been solved by now, because this they knew the same thing 50 years ago that we know now, but they're like, but we got things to do now. So
yeah, exactly.
kicking
No,
kicking the
it's
can
a
down the
slow
road.
burn. So yeah, you kick the can all the way down until it's too late. But I think the one other thing, and I'm hoping Trump wins this debate. I want to see him win. I think I'm waiting for this, and I hope it happens. I don't know if it's going to happen, but if because during the DNC, Kamala made a big point about how Trump and the Trump supporters are a threat to democracy, and I'm hoping that one might come up in the debate because simple answer from Trump is, "Oh yeah, I got a lot of votes.
I
How many
I
votes
I
did you
earned
get?"
I earned my votes,
Yeah, right. It's
but
hard for someone who got no votes.
there's not much Kamala can do in this situation. I mean, it's not like, she was getting in there by crook. She got in there by hook, not by crook.
Right. No, I mean it's just ironic. You got someone who received
No,
no votes
right. I totally see
who
the irony.
tries to get behind that, and
And
then
for being the Democratic Party, how democratic does that sound? Because Richie, they knew, everybody knew for the last year or two that Biden was not sharp. The people in power closest to that situation knew what was going on, made the decision to exclude the American people in the voting process, and got their own candidate in there.
yep, yep, yeah. No, it was definitely an establishment stat. That's I think that's a plus for Trump is he's been on the drain the swamp train for a long time, and that's a total swamp move right there for sure. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's one thing though that might hurt him too is because Kamala's she's still in the honeymoon phase. She's so fresh, even though she's been vice president, she hasn't really been in the media much. She was
Right.
not the candidate. They didn't have enough time over the course of the last year and a half to, try to smear her reputation or call her out. And all of a sudden they pulled the old switcheroo. And now the momentum on the Democrat side seen a huge spike. And she might be able to ride that wave all the way through the debate, through the election, and make it through that way. So
1 month ago, I thought Donald Trump had a cakewalk to the presidency. He had just destroyed Joe Biden in the debate. He had just survived a bullet, lived to talk about it, like 50 Cent. Like, he was riding high. And then just out of nowhere, Kamala just gains this entire wave of momentum. It's like dead even right now, I think, in polling.
yeah, it is. I saw today. So Kamala was up barely like 3 days ago, and now it's just pulled a little switch where Trump is supposedly up, but like barely. The odds it's like Trump is like minus 105 and Kamala is like plus 105. So it's a neck and
It,
neck
it's
for
it's
sure.
it's a pick 'em.
Yeah. So but yeah, we'll see. I'm
And,
sure
and,
this
and
debate will have a
any
impact.
final
So
thoughts? Any final predictions? I'll say prediction. I'll go with Donald Trump seems somewhat incoherent, doesn't answer the questions. Kamala sticks to the script. Small win for Kamala.
yeah, I think I will predict. I think he's going to go for the same thing he did last time against Biden, where Biden brought up January 6th, or maybe the moderator brought up January 6th. Anyway, January 6th gets brought up, and Trump had a perfect response, I thought, just for the optics of it, where he, rather than getting down the rabbit hole, that's what makes him look bad when he starts saying, no, there were good people there, all that. No, no. He left it alone, and he said, well, let me tell you, on January 6th, on that day, on January 6th, our economy was in a rapid recovery. Our borders were closed. And he started listing off his track record of what he did as president. Left it at that. I think if January 6th comes up again, he pulls that same move. And I think it works for him.
All right. Stick around for the second half of this podcast where we will do the breakdown after we watch the debate tonight. Welcome back, folks. You may have noticed that we've changed shirts. It's because we are now recording this the day after the debate. We didn't plan this one too great because you're going to be getting some pre-debate talks after you've probably already listened to the debate. Maybe you didn't listen to the debate. That's what we're here for. So, Richie, opening thoughts. I mean, I think from our texting discourse, we both agree that that was probably a Kamala victory. I'll give you the stage so that you can defend or.
Yeah, I mean that's why I had to get rid of that American flag shirt after watching that debate. Wasn't looking too good for America in general. I do think it was a Kamala win. I think you hit it on the head with your prediction. A lot of Trump rambles, small Kamala victory. Might have been even more than small, but I mean, realistically, I don't think either of them. I wasn't impressed by either of them. I think Trump was in his worst form. And we also talked about how, a good strategy by Kamala would be to just get him, bait him with issues he's going to get mad about and try to throw him off the off his game. And I think that's exactly what she did. Um, at the same time, I mean, when it comes down to actually, looking at the candidates, like, oh, it's supposed to be a display of, you know, what do I like about you? Should I pick you? And I don't think either of them displayed anything that I was impressed with that I would be, willing to, they didn't sway me really either way. Kamala, I think, won the debate, but I think that's just because she's better at playing the game and was able to. She kind of won it, in my opinion, in a little bit of kind of a, I don't know what the right word is, a little bit of a shady way where she kind of played some manipulative games. She did lie a lot. Trump lied a lot as well. The moderators were, I thought, terrible. But what do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree. Kamala victory. I can't really pinpoint a certain spot in the debate where I went, that is a woman that I want to vote for, right? That is a very competent, great answer. Kamala's victory came on Trump losing it for himself, essentially. Uh,
Yeah,
ram-
I think so too.
Rambling, like we said, just spouting out ridiculous statements that just didn't seem to work in his favor this time around. Um, I noticed moderator bias a lot as well. They would let Trump speak, and then they would, get the last word in, and then throw it back to Kamala when I didn't see them do that once to her.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the fact checks too were, I mean, that's a good question to even think about is should it be the moderator's role to be the fact checker during the debate? Because at first glance, I would think yes, but then after watching that one and, being someone who's interested in this and I'm not saying that Trump didn't lie at all and that Kamala was lying the whole time. They both lied more than I've ever seen on a political debate, and that's saying a lot because they always lie a lot. And this was pretty bad on both sides when it came to the dishonesty, and it didn't. Kamala would get away with a lot of blatant lies that were easily debunked, already disproven by both right wing and left wing media outlets, and um, they didn't really make an effort at all to correct her on the spot. While they did do that to Trump quite a bit, and also just kind of the tone when they're talking to Trump. I noticed one of the questions that was given to him was about a plan. I believe it was for the economy or for inflation. And after he's done talking, the moderator says, "So let me get this clear. So you don't have a plan, And it's like, how much of a loaded response from a supposedly non-biased moderator can you get? So that's always an issue. And if anything, I really think they did themselves a disservice because I think that helped Trump because it gave him an out. Because the conservative right wing social media and Trump himself are all saying, like, they're calling attention. Look how biased the moderators were. When if it weren't for that, the attention would have been on how bad he performed.
Yeah, in this sort of debate, you need a moderator. I mean, you can't just let those two go toe to toe without a moderator. In free form debates, such as the ones that me and you have all the time, I think moderation gets in the way of things. Their own personal bias comes in, even just phrasing of questions, the way that things can be distorted, changed, manipulated. You can throw softballs to the person you like and throw curveballs to the person you don't. In that sort of setting, though, I do think you need a moderator. You can't let them go mano a mano, cage match style. What do you
No,
think?
yeah, I mean, there definitely needs to be some form of a moderator for sure. And yeah, and I agree. Me and you can disagree on something and have a debate about it, and there would be really not much use of a moderator, maybe to just kind of keep us on track if we start going down rabbit holes. But that's because we're coming from, we have genuine intentions in mind. We're not here to try to own the other person. We're here to try to talk about ideas and figure out what it is we disagree with, and we both respect each other's opinion, so we're both trying to figure out, okay, well, if he thinks this and I think the opposite, there's it's we both kind of agree. There's real answers probably somewhere in the middle. We're probably getting different sources. I think in that situation, you've got you know too much on the line for anyone to really want to play fair on their own without some type of moderation. And also, specifically with these two candidates, I don't think either of them are coming in with good intentions in mind to try to collaboratively solve a problem. I think they're
Right.
both, trying to get the clickbait, and I think that's part of it too. Is that it doesn't really matter so much whether what they say is true in that format. It obviously it seems like they're almost incentivized to just make things up that they know aren't true. That's the thing about a lot of the things Kamala said that I kind of was shocked by a little bit, was that I know that these are untrue without even having to fact check it, and I know that she knows it's untrue. So it's not like she's misspeaking, and same with Trump in some circumstances. So it's like, what is the incentive here? Is the incentive in this debate format just to make shit up and try to get the soundbite kind of clickbait TikTok video, or what?
The incentive is to sway as many people as possible. So most people will tune into that debate, listen for the first 20 or 30 minutes, just say, and walk away with it with just that information, do no further research, do no fact checking, things like that. So you ask, what is the incentive? The incentive is to win votes. By hook or by crook, you need to get names written down voting for you. So is that a morally gray area? Absolutely. Should politicians be honest? Absolutely. But again, it's one of those things. What do they want and how do they get it? What do they want? They want votes. How do they get it? Any way they can. If they have to lie, they'll do it. They have to cheat, they'll do it. They have to steal, they'll do it. So it's a problem of incentive. Really, it's a problem of not
Yeah, right.
having not having safeguards in place to protect people from these crooks, basically.
Yeah, no, it is, yeah, it is kind of just, I don't know. It seems like, do you think there's a way that the debate format might be kind of outdated in the digital world now? It's kind of ironic that we have more access to information at the tip of our fingers than humanity ever has before. Yet it seems like the more and more available that information gets, and the more widespread that information is, it seems like when it comes to these type of debates and these type of big scale news media articles, things like that, it seems like people are more and more easily fooled, or at least maybe the people who are saying the
Misled.
lies, yeah, maybe there's just more and more ability to mislead somehow, and people are taking advantage of it. I don't know. It is a little bit something seems up with it, because this debate, and I've watched them all since 2016. I actually went and rewatched some old ones from before, and you can see there's a clear deterioration when it comes to the the honesty and integrity of the candidates for sure.
Even honesty and integrity. How about just on policy? Like 15 years ago, you ask like John Kerry, some other random guy, it's like, all right, how would you improve the situation for everyday Americans? I bet they'd have five things off the top of their head. Oh, I'm gonna cut tax rates for middle class business owners, right? I'm gonna incentivize entrepreneurship. I'm gonna, lower tariffs, things like that. Whereas today, it's what economic plans do you have? And maybe they have one thing. They asked Kamala what her economic plan was, and she said the small business tax cuts and the tax breaks for child having a child. Right? All right, those are two pretty good ideas in my book. Two very small ideas in my book as well.
Yeah,
What do you think about that?
not much attention was really given to him either. Like I couldn't
No.
really, based on my first watch of it, it was like hard to even come out of it with anything like, okay, here's their differences. It was more so, they asked Kamala what her immigration policy is going to be, and her response was, if you ever go to a Trump rally, you'll see he just rambles on and people leave because they're bored and tired. And then that got in Trump's head. So then it was his turn to talk about the immigration. And he said, no, my rallies, no one gets tired at my rallies. Everyone's wide awake. Starts talking about his rallies. No one even, I don't remember them ever even getting to immigration when it came to a formal question. Now, Trump rambled about it for a while when he was asked different questions, but it's
Right.
like, what's going on here?
Trump's asked about his economic policy, and his economic policy is throwing immigrants out. And then he's asked about the foreign wars, and it's we got to throw immigrants out. It's so my one prediction of I think Trump's going to go to immigration early and often. That one hit with flying colors.
Yeah, nailed that one for sure.
Your prediction of Kamala trying to bait him, that one hit. I mean, Kamala didn't have to do a damn thing in this debate besides just throw out some one-liners and let Trump wreak his own havoc.
That's the thing too. I was disappointed just to see Trump seem so caught off guard by that, or at least not be prepared for it and not have you know, I mean, we're some guys who don't know what the hell we're talking about, and we were able to predict this pretty easily. I've heard plenty of other people on the internet saying like, "Oh yeah, this is it's like all right, if I'm Donald Trump, this is going to be a huge debate for me. How do I not have some preparation in mind where I know Kamala is going to attack me on something that really doesn't matter, and instead of responding to that and just clinging to it, how does he not realize that he would have been in much better shape just kind of dismissing it and going towards some because he did have some good points when it came to maybe not even necessarily policy but just swaying the voter. When he did refer to how the economy was doing much better under him, he would attack Kamala on inflation. Immigration's on a lot of the people's minds. It's been all over social media. Those are it's the same kind of old, it's the same record player over and over again. But those are things that I think the casual viewer might actually look and say, "Oh, Trump was probably better at that." Maybe, but instead he's clinging to these things that no one really cares about. I mean, the one thing I thought he did terribly was when she tried to, and again, I think this is kind of a dirty trick, but Kamala starts rattling off, Trump left us with the worst economy and the worst and all this stuff, which maybe isn't technically a lie, but it's definitely intellectually dishonest because that was all because of COVID, you know? And so she talks about COVID, and Trump's response is, I think we did a great job with COVID. I think we did the best job with COVID. And it's like, no one thinks that. Republicans
Right.
didn't think that.
Right.
It's like, don't even go for COVID. Get COVID out of people's minds and get to something else. That would that would seem like common sense. I would think, but he botched it for sure.
I saw a tweet this morning saying the same exact thing you just said. For weeks, people have been saying Kamala is going to try and bait him into going off the rails. And that's exactly what we saw. So, what was Donald Trump's debate preparation? The question then being, was there any debate preparation? Because the first thing that his team would tell him, the things that we said on this podcast, was don't fall for the tricks. Stick to your guns. Don't go off the rails. Don't start accusing people of eating dogs, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of a bonehead move, I thought too. It might have gotten a laugh from people watching at home, but that's about it. And for most people, that's another thing is he would just confuse, if you are trying to win the independent voter is probably not following politics. And so one thing that Trump he always does this, and he did it terribly in that debate, was he would start referring to like individual events or individual stories that even someone who does follow politics regularly probably doesn't know about or doesn't know that much about. He's referring to these kind of like abstract things about, okay, back in, you know, 2016, she said this in this magazine. And it's like, it's just he just confuses people with that stuff. And I don't know. I think it's bad. It's a bad debate. He was treating it like a Trump rally, but
Right.
it
And
wasn't.
I do have to throw this quote out there. This was my favorite quote of the night. I heard it. My roommate heard it. He was playing Madden the whole time. He like looked over at me during this. He's like, "Did he really just say that?" And we had to write it down word for word to make sure I got it. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens in prison. That's a Mad Lib. That literally sounds like he took the four adjectives and nouns that he likes the most and put them into one sentence.
Yeah, no, I mean, and even some like that one I know nothing about. I don't even know what he's talking about. Some of the stuff he said, just from following it, I know that he wasn't 100% wrong. And but the thing was, it's just like, don't you, why are we focusing on that? One of the things
Right.
was when abortion came up, and I mean, I thought his answer was correct, honestly, and that's when the moderator cut him off too. But he did mention, some of the late term abortion policies, or the post or during birth abortion policies that Democrats have been pushing. Now, that's not a mainstream Democratic left wing ideology at all, and it's not really, 99.9% of people have never heard of that. Now, there have been a few far left radicals who have proposed, um, messing with the laws to make that legal, or to push it to very late term. So
So
I see what he was getting
I
at,
kind of
but
want
he
to
just that's all.
yeah.
I see what he was getting at, but he just did a horrible job of presenting what he was trying to say.
I kind of want to hop in on that abortion one because I had to look that up, that quote from whatever governor that was, Virginia, I think. And, as always in these cases, that quote's missing context. Like the first, like 30 seconds before that, he says, if this pregnancy is non-viable, and then he goes into, options of terminating pregnancies, in the eighth, ninth month, possibly. I do think he says post-birth termination. But, again, that's for a non-viable fetus that would not live long on this earth. Just want to
Right.
clarify
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And to go off that too, I was also just looking into it too, because I know how it is. And for all I knew, that video that he was talking about with Ralph Northam, I'd seen it before. So I knew what he was referencing, but didn't, right. I assume that context is always a thing. So I also looked it up. One thing that he did say, and again, this is also context, but so there was something called the Born Alive Infants Protection Act, passed in 2002. And basically, what it did was, if you were attempting to have an abortion or planning on having an abortion, and the baby was born unexpectedly, whether in a botched abortion or it just was like, it came prematurely, they introduced the act, and what it did was it gave that baby human rights at the time it was born. So any human has the right where if they're in a medical facility, they're about to die, they're supposed to be given treatment to keep them alive. And basically, what that act did was it said that's not the case for infants. Or, well, no, I take that back. The act said that that was also the case for infants. Now, Tim Walz and a lot of other prominent Democrats did push and support, and actually, I think Tim Walz might have signed it into law in his in Minnesota, but they did push to retract that act so that it was no longer the case. Now, again, though, but that doesn't mean that Tim Walz was saying, we're going to go kill babies. But there was, my point being is that there is some semantics there, and there is a lot of like we talked about on one of the last podcasts, where objective truth is harder and harder to come by.
Right.
So
Objective truth may be impossible to come by.
right, and that's a perfect example of Trump taking a very extreme, hyperbolic, exaggerated version of something that is like pretty minor and probably is taken out of context, and trying to blow it up into a big thing, but it just doesn't stick. No one's buying it.
Like,
So
I don't know if you can make an absolutely moral statement on anything. Like watch this thought experiment. You shouldn't kill someone. Everyone agrees with that, right? Now, what if the circumstances this guy is holding his finger over a button that would send out nukes all over the world, right? And he has every intention of doing it. Is it justified to kill that guy? I would say, yeah, probably. I value billions of lives over one life, right?
Hmm.
Then it becomes a very slippery slope of, well, how many lives is enough lives? But, getting away from the point a little bit. But
Yeah. No, that is a good point, actually. And it also, too, is just, okay, maybe this guy's not holding the trigger that's going to kill all these people, but maybe this guy might go talk to this guy and convince him to tell this, and it's like, how
but
far
then is it
into
moral
the
to like kill
abstract can
that
you get?
guy?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like,
Yeah, right.
is it moral
Eventually,
to
it's
kill a
like
guy who
everyone might
might go
do,
convince a guy to do something evil? Like, impossible to
yeah.
say.
No, yeah, exactly. And that's what
Back
a lot
onto
of, I think fundamentally, that's where a lot of these arguments come from. But yeah.
back onto the debate though. We said Trump should have killed it on economic policy, which I don't think he did. I think he lost on economics. We said Trump should have killed it on immigration, which he dropped the ball on immigration so horribly that there was no coming back from it. They brought up foreign wars. I think that one was pretty much a push, maybe slight favor to Trump, just because he gets to play the card of this wouldn't have happened if I was here, which who knows if that's true or not. Literally impossible to say. You any thoughts on that aspect?
No, yeah, I agree. That one was kind of a draw. I think Kamala went a little bit overboard. She was riding high at that point, and she started saying a lot of things. I think she was trying to say things that would continue to get into Trump's head, but that didn't probably really stick with many of the viewers. She, saying, "Oh, I think that these foreign leaders they think you're weak or they think you're, and I don't think that really stuck. I think one thing she said that did kind of stick was she did bring up the fact that well, these foreign leaders like Trump because he's easy to manipulate. And I think that stuck. It stuck with me a little bit because we had just watched her manipulate him for an hour just by simply throwing out little insults here and there that are going to get him riled up and get him off topic. So I think that one was a good point by her. Um, but yeah, and then what was I mean, I can't even really think. They didn't really touch much on um, you know, climate or anything like that, really. I think Trump mentioned a few things. Other than that, I mean, yeah, any big issues that came up, they didn't really even address them.
I can't remember much policy that they talked about. I said Kamala's two economic points that she brought up. I don't remember Trump saying a damn thing about what his oh actually
The tariffs, and
oh
and it's like,
the
why are
tariffs was terrible. Like it is a
that was
tax on the
terrible?
consumer. That's just
Yeah,
if you don't know that, you do not know economics
and
101.
and that yeah, that's the thing, and it's like he'll never. I mean, I don't really even know what he means. I mean, I've seen him in the past where he says something that doesn't really sound right, but then it's, more complicated and down the line it somehow makes sense. That one, it could be that I just don't know, but to me, I don't see what he's talking about. He says we're going to increase tariffs, but it's not going to contribute to inflation and Americans aren't going to pay for it. Other countries are going to pay for it. That's not how tariffs work,
That's
at
that's
least as far
that's
as I
that's
know.
that's the opposite of how tariffs work.
Yeah, they're by nature they're inflationary. So it's like, all right,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to. If that's your case, how is it not going to contribute to inflation? And I'm yet to see him explain any further. So
Yeah. Are they doing a third debate? Well, this would be their second debate, the third one in the presidential schematics. Are they doing a third? Do you know?
I heard that Trump doesn't want to do another one now,
Yeah.
which yeah, I don't blame him. And I mean, I think he's going with the reasoning of well, I'm not going to go do a debate on these mainstream left wing media outlets because they're clearly biased against me, which he's right, but it also seems like kind of a cop out. I don't think it really benefits him to be up on that debate stage. I think at least last night it didn't. It definitely did against Biden, but that was less so that Trump won, more so that Biden just couldn't formulate a sentence.
Biden
So
was just quite literally inept. So
yeah, and yeah, I don't think I don't know. I'd like to see another one, but I don't think I don't know. It doesn't seem like Trump has any incentive to do it.
Yeah. You have any closing thoughts on the debate before we get into the philosophy of leadership?
I did think his closing statements were good. I think he should have just stuck with that for the full hour and a half. He basically said in his closing statement all of this stuff that Kamala says. Well, she's been in office for 3.5 years, and none of it's gotten done. And so, he kind of just emphasized that, it, if this is what you want to do, why aren't you going to do it? He also kind of touched on that she flip flops a lot, where she used to be very anti-gun, and now she's up there saying, "Oh, I'm a gun owner and pro guns," or she has a couple of those.
Anti-fracking.
Yeah, the fracking one was another one. So I think he did good in those closing statements, but other than that, I think overall it was a terrible night for him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a betting man personally. You look at the betting lines. Trump started off the slight favorite. I think you texted me like an hour in, and it had already moved 16 points in Kamala's favor.
Yeah, I think it went even further now.
I'd imagine. The odds makers know what they're doing. Um, I think
Money doesn't lie.
exactly. Uh,
Trump lies, Kamala lies, money don't lie.
exactly. All right, let's get into the philosophy behind debates, behind leadership. It's a pretty interesting thought to me that across generations, across nations, that everyone kind of has a similar thought on what a good leader is and what a good leader does. So, what do you think are some strong leadership characteristics that you would like to see out of a president, you'd like to see out of your boss, you'd like to see out of, anyone in position of power?
Yeah, that's a great question. Say one of them is I feel like I like to see leaders who lead by example, um, and who've kind of done it before and are doing it with their team. That's more so in a company, but also in a country where it's not a good leader is not so much a boss or a delegator, but more so the guy on the front lines.
Lead by example.
What do you think?
A big one for me is uh, responsibility, owning up to your actions, which is something that politicians essentially never do. It's deny, deny, deny. I think it's a big thing out of a leader to be held accountable, right? I said this. I was wrong. I did this. That was incorrect of me. Just being able to own up to your mistakes, admit that you do make mistakes, that you are human, and then have a plan to rectify these errors. That's a
Yeah,
that's a
absolutely.
big one for me.
I agree.
Another,
That reminds me of sorry,
no,
quick
you're good.
one. That reminds me
You're
of
good. Go on.
Jocko. If you know Jocko, he's one of those Navy SEAL guys. It's like he's kind of like a David Goggins type character, but he's got an entire book about that called Extreme Ownership, where anyone who's making excuses and saying, "Oh, well, this went wrong because of this guy that works for me, or this guy that's in my, that's in my group," uh, that's not a leader. A leader is someone where no matter whether it was directly your fault or not, someone who takes responsibility, has extreme ownership over the situation, and if things go wrong, they'll put themselves on the line for it, and if things go right, they attribute it to their team as well as themselves.
And then another big one I think is just attitude. How much more willing are you to go out on the line for someone who would do that for you? How much more willing are you to go the extra mile when you know that the person you're doing it for is going to respect you for it, is going to acknowledge, hey, thanks for going above and beyond. Thanks for going the extra step, right? Versus someone who doesn't acknowledge your accomplishments. All right, like I don't need constant praise, something like that, but I do need to be reassured that, I'm doing the right thing, things like that.
Yeah, I think that makes a huge difference. I'm thinking just about work where it's, kind of, yeah, being encouraging and, building up confidence and building up um, good attitude in your team by having good confidence and attitude in yourself. That I think that makes a good leader as well. I think that's almost necessary. I don't think it really I don't think it really works much when you picture like the old kind of like the old like Ebenezer Scrooge type boss who's just kind of, like I feel like the guys like that might make it in the short term, but in the long term, they're destined to fail just because they don't have the heart of their team behind them.
Here's a remember the Titans quote for you. Attitude is a reflection of leadership. However you see your leader act, that's how you'll act. If your
Hmm.
boss doesn't put in the effort, if your boss is lazy, you're going to be lazy. It's like, well, why should I bust my ass when he's a lazy POS, right? Uh,
Yep.
you see your boss going the extra mile, really going above and beyond, really trying to fix the situation. You're going to naturally try and do that. You want to emulate those behaviors, and behaviors are emulated on both sides. Like I said, if you're lazy, your people will be lazy. If you do the right thing, if you're courageous, if you're outgoing, if you're a stand-up guy, hopefully the people underneath you will learn from you and act accordingly.
Yeah, agreed. I also heard one too. This was more just in a work sense, but talking about how, good leaders will, rather than trying to mold their people into the parts that they need them to play, they'll design their structures and systems to fit the people that they have. So, if you're leading a small company, say, or like a startup, rather than trying to pick people or get people and mold them into the type of people that you think need to, be in the positions that you need covered. They say like a lot, and I think a lot of like the tech startups would do stuff like this, where they would, rather than that, they would take the person and kind of try to mold a position for them, so that all of their good features were amplified. And then that way, now you've got a bunch of new positions that weren't things before. But if you have the right group of people and you do that, you have the right leader, then it seems to work.
So there's a give and take there. I'd have to counter with, um, you know, molding positions around people or molding people into positions. Like for a startup, it could work very well. Like I have a guy who is amazing talking with people, but he can't do much on like the tech back end. All right, obviously we're going to put him on a customer facing role. Things like that are necessary. I'm going to bring in an NFL metaphor. There's a big thing in the NFL. Do you get players that fit your system, or do you get a system that fits your players? And it has to be a little bit of both, in my opinion. So you look at like the Dolphins, just say they have a system where all of their guys are kind of interchangeable. They have really small, fast guys. So anyone can play any position, right? So it's kind of both in that aspect. They have a leader who says, this is the type of worker that I want. He has to be small, fast, agile, right? But then they also are then moldable to perform different roles within the system. So I think it's a give and take between, molding people to your system, having a system molded to your people.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. And as someone who's part of a team, it's always a good quality to be adaptable. So yeah, I agree with that. I think it is definitely a give or take, but I think a lot of times when people are in positions of power at companies or considered leaders, people confuse leader with boss or something like that. Where you do sometimes you get people who they think that their system's perfect. Oh, it worked with my last company. It worked with my last team. So the problem, that quarterback who trades teams, well, now the problem must be the running back because we're all doing the same. I'm doing the same thing. I have the same system. So the running back must be screwing up or the line must be screwing up, when having that kind of mindset where it's like, all right, we do have different people. Maybe we adjust the system, might be worth considering as well.
And
Um,
I want to end my thoughts on leadership here. Very interesting to me that across time, there are certain adjectives that are always used to describe good leaders: courageous, brave, you know, outgoing. It's an extrovert's world in a certain sense where people underneath the leader don't have to be courageous. You can be a timid follower. You can't be a timid leader, right? It's just certain things like that you have to have a certain psychological disposition sometimes to be an effective leader.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it, at least as far as we think of a leader as, someone like we talked about who is up on the front lines, that type of thing. Who would you say, if you could think of any, celebrity athletes, you know, even anyone in your own life, who would you say exemplifies the leadership characteristics that we're talking about the most?
Oh, that's a brutal question. Um,
I've been trying to think
yeah, I
about
was
it
gonna
too
say
this
if
whole
if
time.
you
So
have any, feel free. Off the top of my head, I can't really think of anyone. Maybe Tom Brady. You always hear about Brady was always a good locker room guy. Was always killer winning mentality, and that's infectious. Like I said,
hmm
attitude is a reflection of leadership. You see Tom Brady busting his balls. You see Tom Brady winning 5 Super Bowls. You see Tom Brady being the first guy in, last guy out. That rubs off on everyone.
yeah, no,
You,
yeah, like MJ, they say the same thing about him. I was thinking more in a business aspect. You're gonna
yeah.
hate this one, but I do think of Elon,
Oh
just because
god.
of yeah, I mean, and that's a good topic for another debate. But just because one thing that, at least from reports, is that if he's got his people working late, he's at the office with them, or he's working late with them. He tries to work
We
harder than
we
anyone else
we
there.
we might have to debate this because I see that as ineffective leadership when you have to sleep on the floor of a company because your own people can't manage tasks. That's a debate for
Not a
another
bad
day,
point.
possibly. We're about out of time here, so thanks for tuning in, everyone. Catch us next week.